going to create some random or semi-random content using AI generative tools like Claude 3 or ChatGPT 4.0. So I'm going to start with a table, I believe, because I don't really have any other way to randomize things. And I don't have a lot of control over it, so this would be fine. But if you guys have anything that you would like to see or to do during this show, that's fine. Going to be taking the content and putting it into Fantasy Grounds eventually. But we can get into story building, NPCs, creating custom classes or subclasses, making races or whatever species, whatever they want to call those. And this would be for homebrew stuff, so not necessarily for commercial use, but this would be something that you might use to supplement your games or perhaps just do some research on a setting that you're working on. So I will be using the D&D 5e rule set because that's the one I'm most comfortable and familiar with in Fantasy Grounds. But I've also done stuff for Cyberpunk, Fallout, and Alien. So there's a lot of use cases here. And even if you use like Pathfinder or any other rule set, you can use this type of tool for that. So I'm going to do something a little different. Basically, I'm going to go to the browser, and I have Claude 3, and I also have ChatGPT loaded. The cell down here on the bottom is basically just a window with the browser overlaid on top of it. And essentially, that's where I'm going to be using the AI tool, so you can kind of see. It's going to be kind of small, unfortunately, but at least you'll have an idea of what I'm doing, and I'll explain that through my narration. You know, I like to talk, and no, I don't like to hear myself talking, but I do talk a lot during these, so pardon me on that. But this is really an exercise of creativity, luck, random or semi-randomness. It's not quite random. And what I have right now here is kind of a fresh start. I don't want to say it's, pristine here because I do have the 5e rule set loaded. If I really wanted a fresh start, I'd use like the core rules or something like that. But only thing I have loaded in here is the SRD, and that's probably all I'm going to need for this at the most. I don't need a bunch of other stuff. I might load a book or two down the road if I wanted to refer to something. Maybe if you were working on something in the Forgotten Realms, or if you're in another setting, maybe Night City for Cyberpunk. So that might be sometimes you might load that up, copy and paste some of the text, and put it into the AI tool to do your research or to generate extra content for your game. So it just kind of depends on what your use case is, what your needs are, that sort of thing. So I don't really have an agenda, to be honest with you. I sat down and I'm thinking, what do I want to do today? I didn't really have a plan. I'm actually getting over a nasty cold. I'm going on vacation tomorrow. This is like the last time I'm going to be able to stream. So if you guys want anything particular, or if you guys want me to try something or whatever, I'm willing to do that. But for the time being, I'm going to show you how I use the tools, and then you can decide if you want me to generate anything particular. It can be artwork. The only thing I don't recommend doing with ChatGPT or one of the other generative programs is maps. It doesn't do a very good job with it. It's really frustrating. I don't know what the problem is, but when you actually say map, it actually starts throwing down a tile on it that doesn't line up with anything, and it looks really horrible. You can tell it's AI. At that, I would probably just make a texture or some kind of tile. That would probably work out better for you, and then just use that as a building block for a map. Character portraits, background scenes, images of your characters and such. That's not too hard to do. Real life stuff, depending on how you prompt it, will generate different degrees of success or failure, and you got to realize that what's good to you may not be good to another person. So the wording that you put in there and your expected output has a lot to do with the type of results you're going to get. So in this case, we're going to be working with text. Claude 3 is mostly text. It doesn't have the same capabilities as ChatGPT, but the writing capabilities of Claude 3 are like 3 times greater than ChatGPT. So I'm using Claude 3 right now. That's what I have loaded. And I'm going to read off what I have for the actual prompt. So I said, please create an 8-result rollable list of various biomes for the D&D 5e rule set. Example of desired sample text format. Simple, actually, is what this should say. So this is basically this. There's a title, and then there's like the header, and then there's 2 examples of how I want the results to look. And the reason I'm doing this, because I might want to import this into Fantasy Grounds, and if it has a bunch of HTML markup or anything weird, it's not going to import properly. And that's what I generally do with generative tools, is I'll copy and paste the data into Fantasy Grounds. I want it to prepare the text in kind of a plain format so I can use it in Fantasy Grounds. If you start putting in tables and all that other stuff, you're going to have to fix the text, and that's really what I'm trying to avoid, is having to edit too much of the text and save myself a little time in the long run. So I'm just going to have it generate 8 results, and then I'll have it roll. Just ask it to pick a random number, and we'll go from there to start creating content. So we're kind of starting from scratch. I have no idea what the environment's going to be like, the plot, none of that stuff. I'm just going to have it create the table, and then we're going to roll on it. So now that I have this prompt typed out, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Oops, there it goes. So, okay. So it gave me diverse biomes of the realms. That's what it called it. 1d8, and then the result was biomes. So there's a temperate forest, tropical jungle, Arctic tundra, scorching desert, coastal wetlands, mountain range, grassland plains, and underground caverns. So that's pretty good. I like the results. Not bad. And being that this is a rollable table, you can, and it's in the correct format, you can actually put this into Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to copy and paste most of the text, and I'm going to bring up the tables here in Fantasy Grounds, which is over here in the campaign data. And like I always do this in most of my shows, is this group up here is how you can keep things separated and organized in your campaign. So if you're building stuff, it's better to have a separate group so you can differentiate that between what you've made and what's already included in your adventure. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use a drop down, click this add category, and it's going to make a group called group 1. So I'll go ahead and edit the list, and this is going to be, I'll just say AI tables or something, because I don't really have, well actually this has got a name. It's this is a biome table, so we'll just say biomes of the realms. That's the name of this group. So this is the text description of this group. Now I'm going to click on the import text, and this function is core to the Fantasy Grounds core rules. So if you use this with other rule sets, it should work. This is one feature that is universal with Fantasy Grounds. There are some others, like 5e has an NPC importer. That's not going to be the same in other rule sets. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this here. This is the data that I got from the website. And then diverse biomes of the realms. I'm going to copy and paste that title and put that up here. So now I have the actual table stuff. And then down at the bottom, if I leave this as a simple table, it's not going to quite come out what I would hope. So I'm going to click on delimited, because a simple table, you wouldn't put any numbers here, and you'd probably just want one word type things like a list or something like that. But in this case, we have a divider, which is the pipe symbol. So that's going to be the delimiter. That's what divides the roles from the text. I don't use colons, semicolons, or commas, because quite often sentences or paragraphs have all those in there, and it will create another column. I don't want that. The only thing I want is this pipe. And if I wanted to put another pipe symbol after this and have another result, that's fine. But I don't want the additional rows or columns. So this is why it's set up this way. Is the column headers in the first row? Yes. So this first top row is the header. And then it says table ranges in first column. I'm going to go ahead and confirm. So that's these numbers here on the left. So this is how the import tool can work for you. And it can make this a lot faster for you. And if you're someone who likes to use the story template and create a bunch of tables and then have those tables roll on each other and all that stuff, this is the way to go in regards to creating the content. It's a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, and creative sometimes. So you have the best of both worlds, and you're able to create content pretty quickly. Hey, morning, Jinx. So now that I have this inputted, I'm going to go ahead and hit import, and that gives you your rollable list. So now when you roll on here, you can check the results. Ooh, underground caverns. So that's where we're going to go next. So underground caverns. So now what I want to do is come back into into the generative AI tool, and I'm going to ask it to create another table. And I'm going to say, since I've already trained it on what the formatting is, I don't have to be as in depth. I'm going to say create a 6 result. Since it's Underdark, or underground caverns, I'll say a 6 result underground caverns location. And then I'll say we'll say in this case Forgotten Realms, since I don't have any other. But it could be anything. It doesn't have to be Forgotten Realms. So create a 6 result underground cavern location in the Forgotten Realm. So that way it kind of lines up with the lore. So I'm going to say keep in mind the lore and the setting so as to avoid duplication and other discrepancies. So I want it to kind of be a little bit more thoughtful on this approach when it makes this table. Underground cavern, let's say rollable list. So this is, I want it to basically make another table that we can roll on that's going to determine the location. And then I asked it to be wary of the setting and for a discrepancy. So if you were worried about, what's canon and what isn't, or, if you were trying to write something that's more involved with a specific location or a specific setting, you can put stuff like that in there to help avoid those inconsistencies. It's not always going to be right, but it'll be a lot closer than not saying anything. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here we go. So it took my prompt and then went some. So the list provides locations for the Forgotten Realms. So Menzo Baronzan, Blingenstone, Gracklstuff, Arumaikus, which is the fungal network in the Upper Dark, Cholson, which is an abandoned drow city. Now it's inhabited by shadow dragons, and Ornidal is a mind flayer city. So what we'll do is do the same thing, copy and paste the text, and put it into Fantasy Grounds. So we'll do this again. So here's the import. I'm going to hit Control V. It's already set down here. Once you set this up, you don't have to switch it unless you change it again manually. So it should stay that way for your session at least. I don't know if it remembers it after you leave Fantasy Grounds, but if you're still in it, it should do this. And another thing is these characters. You have to be careful with this, with these accents. It probably won't hurt anything, but it may give it issues. So if you've got hyphens or weird punctuation, you want to leave that out. See, I copied this information here, and it has the circumflex over the letter U. Fantasy Grounds doesn't take those very well, so I try to avoid that if possible. And that way, when you go to export it or parse it and something, it doesn't give you grief. And sometimes it gives you this weird like output, like some weird garbled text. So, and that's because it's not following the ISO text formatting that it requires. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and hit import, and there we go. So now we got another table that we can roll on. So if we wanted to, we could take and call on this other table to roll if we were going to start off that way. So we can say roll on this table, which is the diverse biomes, and then we could take that and make something like this for every single biome. And then you might have, 4 to 6 results on each one of those tables, and then link those, link this to whatever the name of the table is. And you can have this roll on that table and roll on that, so you can kind of start creating your own story, kind of like make your own random location thing, especially if you're doing like a one-shot homebrew and you're not certain what you want to do or work on. You can do something like this. So it kind of has some luck, creativity, or little creativity, and then of course the semi-random results. I call it semi-random because it's kind of random but not. So this is just one use case for using AI tools, is to create tables. And this really helps speed things up, especially in Fantasy Grounds and probably any of the other virtual tabletops that are out there. So if you know the expected output, that is something that's going to help you a lot when it comes to training the AI tool. If you can give an example what you want, then you're going to get better results. And that's generally where we end up fighting with the AI tool, but we haven't given it a good example of what type of output we're expecting. So that's generally for Fantasy Grounds, it's plain text. You don't want a bunch of fancy markup, and you don't want, tables and, URL links and all that stuff. You want it just to be really basic raw text, because if you don't, you're going to have to fix all that before you use any of these tools that import for Fantasy Grounds. So that's just kind of the way it is. So that's something that I think you'll have to decide, if it's worth it to you to use this kind of thing. I just like the idea that I don't have to type all this out. If I was to make this by hand, I'd still be working on it. So that's kind of the way I look at this, as a time saver, not really necessarily looking to replace somebody's job, right? I mean, that's the worry, that this is going to take someone's job. It's not what I'm doing here. Maybe down the road, if I decide to make a commercial product, I'll have to think about that more. But until then, I'm going to learn how to use the tool to fit my needs for my own personal campaigns. So this is just an example of some of the things you can do. So let's roll on the table. Let's see what we get. And I usually lock the table after I'm done editing. And let's go ahead and roll and see what we get. We got a 1. So what do you know? City of Spiders. I'm kind of tired of Menzo Baronzon. Let's roll again. I'm cheating here, but okay, 5. Oh yeah, so Cholson, the City of Worm Shadows. That sounds interesting. I want to do that. So Cholson is a city in the if you've read some of the novels, they've kind of dive into this, and I believe 4th edition went into this, like for D&D. Basically, they're like drow that are like these shadow dragons, half shadow dragon, half drow. They're kind of tied into the nether dark or whatever it is, and so it's kind of a cool backstory. It's kind of I wouldn't say it's a major story arc, but it is something that's interesting to me, because I got burned out on Lolth and the Spider Queen and all that stuff. So I kind of like these little side things. Think of it kind of like you have the Star Wars thing where you got the main stories, but then you have all these side things. That's kind of what it reminds me of, is something like that, where you have not the romantic, the big characters, like Driss and all that, but you have some side characters that are just important, or just as important, but they're not as featured because no one cares or no one knows, So this is just a way to kind of get creative, and then also to utilize Fantasy Grounds to generate content and to help you input content into Fantasy Grounds. So this is a fun exercise too. I'm having a lot of fun just talking to you guys and putting this stuff in randomly. And once you understand how these tools work, it gets to be a lot funner, a lot easier, and a lot more efficient. You can get frustrated though on the formatting. I'm not going to lie, that pissed me off for a while until I figured out how to train the AI tool to create the content that I want. So before I go too much further, I want to take and think about maybe creating some art for the city of Cholson. So I don't know much about it. So I know a little bit from reading the books and that sort of thing, but I want to get a little bit more of the information about this city. So the best tool for that in this case would be ChatGPT, because it has the functionality to search the internet. Claude 3 is banned or barred from the internet. You're strictly going off of the database. In this case, you're getting the database plus the ability to search. So I'm going to copy and paste the result where it says Cholson is abandoned drow city now inhabited by shadow dragons. So I'm going to go ahead and hit copy, and I would like it to research the and else I gotta make sure I tell it what I want. So I want it to research it. That's not quite enough. I want to list some NPCs, locations, lore, and any other important information. Who are the shadow dragons? So that's kind of, you got to kind of ask for it. You're too vague and ambiguous, you're just going to get some bunch of information that may or may not be useful. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, I'm going to ask it to create this, and we'll see what it does. Okay, so I don't know if these are real locations or not, but it kind of gave me some pretty cool stuff. So Drexel, I guess, a shadow dragon elder who acts as the leader of the shadow dragons in Cholson. Cunning and strategic, Drexel manipulates other factions for the city's benefits. Virma is a drow priestess who worships Valren, who's like the god of trickery and thieves. She serves as an intermediary between the drow remnants and the shadow dragons. And then there's Sylvaris, is a shadow dragon agent who specializes in espionage and gathering intelligence on intruders. I already like that. So then you have the Obsidian Spire, which is the fortress. You have the Whispering Market, a clandestine trading hub where informations are rare and exchanged under the watchful eyes of the shadow dragons. And then Temples of the Shadows, a desecrated temple once dedicated to Lolth, now repurposed by the shadow dragons for their dark rituals. So then it gets into this lore. So I already like this just straight out of the box. So I'm going to copy this information, and I'm going to put this into Claude or whatever you want, Claude 3, because it does a better job with writing. So I'm going to put this in here. And then, see, it kept the formatting, which is kind of cool. So Claude 3 does support this formatting a little bit better than other tools. So just want to let you know. And whenever you need a new line or, like a new space, you have to hit Shift and Enter. If you just hit Enter, it's going to send it and it's going to generate. So when you're creating a new line in most of the generative AI tools, you have to hit Shift and Enter. If you don't, it's going to take it as a command to send the text before you're ready. So Shift and Enter is what you want to do for that. And that takes a bit to get used to that, but that's kind of true of most text editors, is you have to hit Shift and Enter. So it's given me this breakdown of this other thing. So the other thing it wrote here for lore is that it was originally regular dragons, that have become infused with shadow energy, making them more powerful and stealthy. They possess the ability to meld with shadows and have a deep connection to the plane of shadow. The fall of Cholsane was once a thriving drow city. Cholsane fell into ruin due to internal strife and invasions. The Shadow Dragons took over, drawn by the city's strategic position and its connection to shadow magic. Some other important information. So the Shadow Enclave or Conclave is a secret council composed of high-ranking shadow dragons that governs Cholsane's activities, and the Ethereal Nexus is a hidden portal within the city that allows travel to the plane of shadow, guarded fiercely by the shadow dragons. Cholsane is a place of shrouded in mystery and danger, where intrigue and ancient power intertwine under the shadowy rule of the dragon. So it's pretty neat. That's not a bad start. And to be honest with you, I would take that information before I go any further, and I'm going to put that into a note or a story entry or something so I can hold on to it and have access to it. So I'll just go into notes for now, since I'm not really creating the reference manual at this point. So I'm going to create a new note record, and this is something that doesn't get exported or anything like that. So when you're creating content for Fantasy Grounds, if you're going to start a new campaign, and a lot of it's homebrew, I would suggest you make a separate campaign just for working on your campaign, and then another one for playing. And what that does is it gives you flexibility on editing and exporting and updating, because if you put it all in one basket, you're going to start painting yourself into a corner, and then when you want to export the stuff, it's a big mess. So do yourself a favor, make a separate campaign for working on content. It makes it so much easier. When you know that ahead of time, you can make this and use this to test out things. You can design your content, whether it be custom, classes and races and all that stuff, but you don't want to do it in the same campaign that you're playing in. And that's something that we all do. I've done it. And I learned over time that you don't want to do that if you plan on exporting or using the content beyond your campaign. So that's a really difficult thing for people to grasp, but it is a thing. You create the content in a separate campaign, and then you export it so you can use it in your game. And that's kind of the cleaner way, the more safe way to do it. It's okay to build everything in one campaign because it's convenient, right? You got everything together. However, if you want to use all of that same material in another game and such, it becomes a pain in the butt, because you got mixed and matched different story entries and links, and the artwork gets all jacked up. It's just not a fun time. So I'm going to do my, we'll say campaign notes, since I don't really know what this is going to be. And remember, we started off with just a table and rolled on it, and now we got a whole thing here. So I just copied and pasted this into Fantasy Grounds. And one of the nice things is, after you format it in Fantasy Grounds, so one of the things I'm going to do now is right click and clean up the text, which is going to take out all the extra lines. Then I'm going to do a little bit of formatting. I'm not too worried about it because these are just notes. But essentially, you could take this and use this to format your text before you build your reference manual. So this would be a good way to kind of get things started. I mean, you could build your reference manual, or book is what they call it now, but you can do it that way. Or in this case, I'm going to build it, kind of little by little in the campaign notes, and then copy and paste it over. But what's nice is, now that I have this formatted and I have it the way I want it to be, now I can copy and paste this and it will keep the formatting. So if I get all this set the way I want it, and then I decide I want to put it somewhere else in a different location, I could do that. So it's going to be formatted ahead of time, and I don't have to redo that. If any of you used Fantasy Grounds a few years ago, you didn't have that capability. It was a pain in the butt, because if you did any copy and pasting, you had to reformat all of the text. That was annoying. Glad they fixed that, because as a developer, that would have pissed me off, because that's a lot of unnecessary work. So now if I took all this, copied and pasted into a different story entry, it'll keep all of this formatting, which is important, especially when you're doing a bigger project. You're working on little things, no big deal, but when you got a big project and you want to, be more efficient, you want to save time, you want to make things happen, you don't want to have to fight that. So they have changed that in Fantasy Grounds, because before you had to redo any and everything that you did in the story. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of the types of things you might do in this case to stage up your writing. So, I've already got some tables made here. I already got some ideas, got some names, places, and things, and we're rocking. So I might start doing some artwork, but my thing about artwork is, one, it's a pain in the butt. Two, it really depends on what you're trying to do, like for your story. Like, yes, I want a picture of the city, but I need a good example of what it might look like, so I might do a little searching online for that, and I'll show you how that works. You can take an existing image and inspire a new image. It's not going to make a copy of it. They really try to avoid that for copyright reasons. But you can take the colors, the shadowing, the feel of the image, and use that in your art generation or image generation. I wouldn't necessarily call it art, but anyway, so this is basically some use cases for using generative AI tools in Fantasy Grounds. So I think I will stop and do some art. So this is kind of where you have to sort of be organized. And the only reason I'm jumping around because I'm trying to show you different aspects. Honestly, I would do all of the tables first, and then I would do all my note taking, and then I would do all the images, and then I'd do all the NPCs, and then do it in groups so you're not jumping back and forth between all the different types of data and all of the different types of tools. That's where you lose time. So if you're having to copy and paste, you're going back and forth, that takes a long time. It's better when you have everything kind of in a group and you work on it, and then you're done. And then you go to the next group and you work on it. It's a lot more efficient, a lot less movement, a lot less back and forth. And that's what's going to make the difference if you have a large project that you're working on. That's something that helps you keep organized, and it's something that even if you're not making a commercial product and you're working on your campaign for your home, if you always do things a certain way, you have a methodology to how you do things, it makes this so much easier. I mean, every time I get into Fantasy Grounds, I always put the combat tracker here. I always put recolor my dice. I'm always, adjusting where I want the windows to go. And that's just something I do second nature. I don't even think about it now. It's just part of my workflow. And I do that because I know if I don't, it's going to bother me later. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is to be a little bit more organized, do a little bit more work up front, and it pays off a lot in the end. So that's kind of just a tip I've learned over the months and years of using the platform, is the more you plan and do things and kind of work things through and learn a system, it really helps a lot. And it does cut down frustration and jumping up and down and getting pissed off for nothing. So anyhow, this is just a use case. Now I'm going to actually, I'm going to see what Claude does with this, but I need to give it output because I pasted this in here. I haven't hit enter yet. But what I want to do is potentially, you know what? I'm just going to have it make a list. I'll just say make a summary list of the places, people, and things. And that's because sometimes it's handy just to have a reference, because then you will know what you need to work on, right? So here are the things that we're going to work on. So I'm actually going to take this and copy this in. And then I'll use this And this is going to be part of the workflow I got here. So, places, people, okay. List summarizes the key elements. I don't care about that. Sometimes I don't like the summary that you're given at the end. Like this, I don't need that. I know it's a list. It's worse in ChatGPT. This really pisses me off. I wish I can turn that off because it's a summary, and sometimes depending on what you're making, it's helpful, but most of the time it's not. And it's actually wasting the token length that you have or the limitations for the text. So if you add that up over a month of using this tool, you're losing, like 2% or something like that. So yeah, I don't know about this. This pisses me off about AI tools, period. And most of them do this, and I have no idea how to shut it off. I've told it not to do it. I've looked at other people, and you can kind of trick it into making it smaller. And this is not bad, but when you use ChatGPT, it gives you like a whole freaking paragraph of a summary. And a lot of times I don't give a crap about the summary. I just want the data. And I don't know how to shut that off. So if any of you know how to do that, let me know, because that's been a problem for a while. Okay, so what we want to do is I'm going to go, as I promised, we'll do some images. So let's take a look at some images online. So I want to look under Cholson to see if there's anything out there. I don't necessarily want to use anyone's art, but I need to have a more idea. Obviously, it's a drow city, but I want to look at some images here. Okay, so this is, let's see, that's a deviant art. Yeah, I don't want to take that, but this is something that you might use to inspire the images that you want to create. Shoal Merson was a drow city in the plane of shadows. I don't know if that's what I want. Where'd the image go? Here we go. Nope, don't want that. There's the Shatterkai elves. So you might be using those in your adventure. Okay, here we go. Here's Cholson. Okay, so this is the image that I was looking for. So I'm going to right click and go to copy image and then go into my session here and hit Control V. And I'm going to say using the attached image, create a detailed image of the Underdark city. I don't know if it knows that. I'll just say detailed image inspired by the attached I would say use gray, black, and purple hues, as well as an expert dungeons and dungeons. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons character art. And then I'm going to say kind of want it to be kind of photorealistic, even though I'm not looking for photorealism. It helps with the type of art you're going to get out of it. And then 3D animation, Octane render, style art. So this is going to kind of give you that video game, but it's being that it's inspired by that image, it should be okay. Sometimes it's too video game looking. Octane render. So Octane is kind of like your program for video games and stuff to make. It's almost like Blender. So 3D animation, comma, Octane render style art, and then we'll just see what it comes up with. So using it, create a detailed image of an underdark city. See, I don't know if it understands what this means, but it should, because this can actually, if it doesn't have context, it will look for it, and that's what's kind of nice about this. That's why I don't use it and try to use it in Claude 3, because it doesn't necessarily know what that is. Although it's probably in its training, but it may not understand exactly what you're trying to do. So we'll see what it does. It's going to take that image. Hopefully it's going to make something like this. I don't necessarily want all this other stuff, but we'll see what it does. I'm not too worried about it. It's just an exercise. Oh yeah, that looks nice. So there we go. So that's not bad. It's a little bit of weirdness here and there, but all in all, I'll buy it. Yeah, it looks really nice. So if there was anything you didn't like, you can touch it up and get rid of it. I do like it though. And it does kind of have some of the feel for this. It's not perfect, but you can see it took the spires and the sky bridge and some of the coloring. So that's exactly what I wanted it to do. I'm not looking for an exact copy, but that is pretty damn good. And this is the power of using AI tools. Now, whether you can sell this or not, that's another story, but using it for your homebrew campaigns, I don't see a problem with it. So there we go. That is really nice. So at this point, I would make all the images that I could think of, make a list, and then put all those in a folder, edit them, convert them, give them new titles, and then put them into Fantasy Grounds. So that's an important aspect, is how do you manage images? So images are covered in the Atlassian guide. So if you go to the Fantasy Grounds Atlassian, it will tell you what the image sizes should be. And it doesn't mean you have to follow it verbatim, but it does give you an idea of what they do when they create their own content for Fantasy Grounds. So if you ever wondered, like, well, how do I know what size the stuff's supposed to be? So if you come to the Atlassian and you look under, I'm going to actually move this over to the main screen. This is important. So if you come to the Fantasy Grounds Atlassian, this is going to essentially give you the blueprint of what you're going to need for doing images, for formatting, all that stuff. So go to the developer guide. So this is the drop-down menu here. It's not in the user manual. That tells you how to use the images. It doesn't tell you how to create it. So here's the developer guide, and then you go to the product guidelines. And this tells you what format, what size, all that stuff. So this is important when you're developing, especially like commercial products. But if you stay within these guidelines when you make your own, you're going to have less issues when it comes to performance. See a lot of people doing this, and I've done it too, where you've taken this huge image. It's like, I don't know, 8,000 by whatever the dimensions are, which is way over 4K. So 4K is kind of like your maximum. I think 2K is fine. That's like around, 2,000 by 2,000. That's plenty for a map. So this is just to give you an idea of how to do this stuff, how to develop the content. And this will also make sure that whatever you're working on is going to be more compatible with more computers. More of your players will be able to handle it. Because if you make this really huge, beautiful map and it doesn't quite transfer over to your friends, that's when you start getting pissed off. So if you keep this within these guidelines, you're going to be okay. It helps a lot. So all this stuff is on the Atlassian guide. It's no secret. All this stuff, it even talks about like how to develop modules, like token packs, portrait packs, background decals, image assets, line of sight. It even goes into how to, an example video. It's a little dated, but it's still pretty accurate, and it tells you how to do it. So this is, just the things, knowing where these tools are and what you have available to you is half the battle. And that's why I do these videos sometimes, is because I want you guys to know that there's tools out there and guidelines and different things out there to help you create content. And that's kind of why I've been doing these for the last 6 months or so, because I think it's a little bit of weirdness here and there is a good way to describe a drow, yeah, no doubt. So this type of thing helps with generating images. It helps making tables. You can make NPCs. So let's go back to, I want to make an NPC, and I want to show you guys what it is that some of the capabilities that are inherent with ChatGPT and Claude. All right, so just as an example, so we want to make a Shatterkai elf, I guess. So I want to create a D&D 5e NPC stat block for a Shatterkai. I guess that's how, let me make sure it's spelled right. You don't have to be 100% accurate, but it really helps. There's Cholson. See, I might take this information here and have it parse this out. So this is another tool that you can do, and we'll do that shortly. But okay, this is, yeah, it's quite a bit of content here. So let me, where did that image go? A Shatterkai. Oopsie. Okay, Shatterkai, where are you? Okay. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay, so what we'll do now is, yeah, so the Cholson are half drow, half dragons. They're creatures known as the Zeklund. I want to make one of those. This is what I was getting at. So I wanted to give this ChatGPT a little bit of context. And instead of that, for a let's see, stat block for, don't want that, don't want that. Okay, so that's what I wanted. So create a D&D NPC stat block for a race of half drow, half dragon creatures known as Zeklund. So let's say it has gray skin, black onyx eyes, a lithe and wiry build, and black, and I'll say small, black dragon wings on its back. Say, it is a humanoid and is wearing leather armor. I'll say black leather armor with a black and gray cloak. And then I'll do this later, but this is just kind of how I create the art too. So what I'll do is I'll just take some of this, like this thing here, and this will probably help work into how it's going to turn out. I'll say it is armed with a dagger. And then I'll get into particulars of the style. So I want to say include the lore, background, tactics, and physical appearance at the end of the stat block. So it's going to include some of this stuff. This is a little much, to be honest with you, but I kind of wanted to give it something to go on, a little bit more context. Let's see, it has gray skin, black. I don't think it needs that. But I'll just leave it in there for context. All right, so then I'm going to say, expert Dungeons and Dragons character artwork. So this is just kind of like a framework that I use in a lot of the art that I do. I don't know why this is, but this has been around for a while. But if you put that in there, it helps sometimes with the image generation. Let's say photorealistic. That way it's more detailed. And then, of course, my 3D animation Octane render style. So this might be part of a preset. Maybe you have this somewhere where you can copy and paste that in at the end. And then I'll say create a D&D stat block. So this is also kind of mixing in the appearance. So I don't know if I want to include that in here. It might throw it off. So I'll go ahead and cut that out and just do the stat block for now. But I want to say use the provided NPC stat block template from your memory data. So I did train it on this, and it's supposed to remember some content. I asked it specifically to remember the format. We'll see if it does it or not. Yeah, I can already tell it's broken. I mean, it looks pretty good overall, but right here, it's broken right there. So I'm going to copy that and say, this is not the proper NPC ability score format. Please fix. Use the data from our custom memory. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. It's crazy. I don't know why it can't remember it, but it just doesn't. No, that's more like it. But that isn't exactly what I wanted. I don't want the pipes. So I'm going to tell it. This is correct, but remove the pipe symbols. and leave the spaces. So sometimes I've asked it to take that out, and then it takes the damn spaces out too. We'll see if it fixes it or not. But this is the kind of crap that you're going to be dealing with when you prompt for certain specific things. See, now it did it this way again. I don't know what the hell it's doing. But essentially, that's how you can use this tool to create stat blocks. So what I'm going to do is take this and all I asked it to do is take these out. I mean, I don't know what's so hard about that, but it doesn't, for some reason, it just, I don't know, it has a hard time with it. It always has. Even when I first started doing this is probably the most annoying thing about this, is that it just wouldn't give me the format that I have to give it examples all the time, every time I do this. I'll say this is the proper format. We'll see if it does it right. Nope. Still doing it. I don't know why it does that, but I can get it to work. But just so you know, this is the proper format. So what I'm going to do is explain it. I'm going to say, now I'm going to give it more context. So what I'll say is the acronyms go on one line and the scores and the corresponding go on the bottom. Because that's basically what goes wrong quite often when you're doing copy and pasting from a stat block, whether it be online or anything like that. If there's one little thing off, the parsing tool is not going to work. So that's why I'm fussing with it. Ability scores. The ability acronyms all right. Maybe it'll figure it out now. Sometimes you have to give it more context. There we go. So now I'll ask it to make an image, but I want to take the stat block and copy it. And then I'm going to go into the NPC tool here, make a new group. So this is going to be, I'll just say AI NPCs for now. And then come up here and put that in here. And if you're going to be doing this, any lore or anything that's not part of the stat block needs to go on the right hand side. So I'm going to paste that over here and get rid of this. That way, everything will be good. Okay, so Zeklin. And all I'm doing now is kind of pre-formatting. I don't have to do this right now, but I want you to see the process I'm going through. Okay, so there's the formatting. Got rid of the extra spaces that I don't want. And go ahead and hit import. And there we go. So there's the half-drow Zeklin. Has a little breath weapon. Here's a nice little summary. Beautiful. That's what I want to see. Okay, so what I'm going to say is create a detailed image of the Zeppelin above and use the appearance description to guide the image generation. Appearance Zeppelin. Okay. And let's say, we'll see what it does. I'm not going to do too much because sometimes I like to, if it doesn't give me what I want, then I'll reprompt it. But I try to avoid that too because you're going to lose out your iterations. So especially if you're using a free account, if you keep making one little change, it's going to eat up your time. And that's not exactly what I wanted. So this is kind of cool looking. But it, it's not exactly because I didn't give it any style. So this is kind of the preliminary. Yeah, it's okay. I didn't give it the normal parameters that I usually do. So what I will do here is it's going off of this. So what I'll do is I'll say recreate, but the face should look more elven, and in the expert Dungeons and Dragons style artwork or character artwork. And then I want to say photorealistic. This is what I'm saying. Like you could make the template and just kind of swap out. That's how you get consistency too. This actually looks like a toy. It doesn't even look like that. Okay. Photorealistic, 3D animation, and then comma, octane render, style, art. We'll see. It kind of is. I mean, this would fly, it would work, but I don't like the way it turned out. I think it could be a little better. Yeah, so that's a little better. I mean, that's a little bit more closer to what I want. I don't like the ears being that big, but other than that, I mean, it's not bad. So this would actually work. I could live with that. But if you weren't happy, like in this case, I complained about the ear. So you can go into here and select the part that you want to edit. So I'll do this. And you have to give it context. If you don't, it's not going to know like what you're trying to do. Like if you just trace over the ear, it's not going to know what you're trying to do. You need the stuff around it too. So I'm going to say smaller ear, elven ear. We'll see if it fixes it or not. I just don't like it looking like World of Warcraft elves, like the moon elves or night elves or whatever they were. That drives me nuts. And you'll find that a lot of AI tools will do this. You ask for a dwarf, it gives you elven ears. It's so annoying. I don't know what caused that, but early on in the AI tools, when they were first starting, I mean, every single thing had it's a little better. Every single thing had elven ears, even though it wasn't an elf. It still kind of does that. If I ask for a dwarf and you go on to this, like after this, I'll do a dwarf, unless I do some serious changing in the wording, it's going to give me will look like a dwarf, but it'll have pointed ears. It's just annoying. But this is not bad. I can live with that. And then I'd pop this into a program, make a portrait out of it, and maybe a full body image would be the next step, I guess. I'd have to reprompt it. I'd probably start with a different image. And the problem with ChatGPT, like Mid-Journey, you have more control. But ChatGPT, you don't have as much control over the size of this window. You have vertical and horizontal. It knows that, but for some reason, if you don't prompt it correctly, you're always going to get like half of the image, or you might get more of the background. So if I would have said, hey, put all this stuff in the background, then it probably would have made it horizontal, but it's, for some reason, it has a hard time doing vertical. So if you wanted a full body image with the wings and everything, it's very difficult to do, just because of the space in here. It can't capture the wings, so it did its best to fit them in here. So I'm pretty happy with that pose. I would deal with that. That's not bad at all. So that's a pretty decent outcome. All right, so that was just like an exercise in art, and I don't think I'm going to go much further than this, but I think one of you can say create it like D&D Beyond, since that works for the F. You can, it will do it, but it's better if you give it. I'm answering Bane's question. He asked if you can do the stat block like D&D Beyond's. You can, but you should give it a template of the text. And so I've already kind of done that before, and I've trained it, and I've done so much stuff to it, internally into my own account. So let's see. Fantasy Grounds Academy. I did a whole article on it, and the reason I did that is so I'd have a template ready to go. Fantasy Grounds Academy. I'll show you what I mean. Fantasy Grounds Academy. All right. So what I want to do is NPC. Okay, so this is the article that I wrote for this particular case, and these are the formats that it can handle. So let me move this over. So this is the traditional way, and this over here is the Monsters of the Multiverse variation. I've trained it on both of these, and it still wants to do it its own way. And I think part of it is because I started the conversation off with something different, because I've had other conversations where it just does it, and I don't even have to mess with it. So it could be because of the context of of what I'm working on, but basically this is good formatting, this is good formatting, vertical, horizontal. And if you can get that, that's what you want. And that's typically what goes wrong. So now if I give it this stat block of this information here and just copy and paste this and put it in there, it will know exactly what I'm doing because I've given it an example. But if you just ask it and you don't have any context, or it doesn't pull, I don't think it's pulling on the memory is what I think, because I've stored that conversation with the format template in there. Sometimes it will do it, sometimes it won't. But it's good practice to learn what you're looking for, because this is generally what breaks. It's this and these things here. Like, you need a period after all these, and that's what goes wrong. So here's a bad one. So this isn't going to work for the import tool. These aren't going to work for the traits. These aren't going to work for the actions, because you got the semicolon here, you got these bullet points. You don't need all that, and this needs to have a period after it, not a hyphen, not semicolons. And that's what you get with stat blocks from different sources. If you copy and paste from a lot of the third-party content, they kind of do it their own way. It kind of follows this format, but not exactly. Then you got to go in and fix it, and that's annoying. But once ChatGPT, or even I think Claude does better. So let me see what happens there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back to Claude, and I'm going to say create a D&D 5e NPC stat block for a Zekkilin. Half drow, half shadow dragon. Well, let's say CR2. And then I'll say using the template below. And that's kind of why I made this article, so I have somewhere I can copy and paste from. Because that was annoying, because I didn't really have any good place to stage it on my phone, because I was using it on my phone. So if I have it on a website, I can just go to it and use that right away. And then we'll see what it does. So this is Claude 3. Yeah, so it did the same thing. How annoying. So it does this, the same crap. So what I'm going to do is say, and I don't know why it can't do that, but I'll say this the proper layout and formatting. Yeah, I don't know why it does that. It's like it just, yeah, see, it's asking if it should move on to do it. I'll say rewrite the stat block. It wants to know all this other crap. There we go. So it does, once it knows like the formatting, then the rest of the way it's not bad. So anyways, I'm gonna get going. I gotta start packing. I'm gonna be on vacation for a few days, and I hope you guys are having a good summer. And tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time on Rob Tui's channel, we're gonna have kind of like I don't know, celebration of life, I guess. But it's going to be a tribute kind of like to Rob and what he's done for our community in overall. He was not the easiest person to get along with, but he was certainly instrumental in helping the Fantasy Grounds Academy get going. He obviously did all the labor of entering all those codes and stuff for the effects coding, and he's made a lot of stuff. So he deserves the respect, and we're going to do a show tonight with the community, and that should be fun. So that's at 6 p.m. or 9 Eastern on Twitch. So if you guys want to watch that, we'll be remembering some of the stuff that Rob was known for, like saying fuck on every show. I know that was one of the criticisms that he had was hey, also Yank stealing that link. Yeah, it's on the Fantasy Grounds Academy website under the I'll put this in the description too, the end of the video. But this is just tells you like the formatting and what to look for. And I did that because it started to piss me off, basically. So it says the following text can be considered a template for a D&D 5e NPC monster stat block formatting. Please note that the HTML markup or Microsoft Word can insert extra lines and unwanted spacing. PDFs are notorious to insert double spacing between carriage returns. Highlighting your text with Control-J will strip that out, but use this with caution and judiciously, or you'll lose the actual formatting of the NPC stat block text. So colons, bold print, indents, bullet points, semicolons, all that crap. This not going to work. And you can't use armor class or whatever this, like the British spelling of armor class. Yeah, gonna have a mess about it. Seems interesting way to get easy to. Yeah, it makes it quicker. Wonder if you can create. Yeah. So it does really help speed things up, especially if you have more than one. If you just have one stat block, this may not be worth the hassle. But if you've got more than one, it certainly helps a lot. But anyways, folks, take care. You guys have a good one.